Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cutting straight through the theory. We're getting into the actionable blueprint of a really practical guide for educators. It's called Become an Effective Teacher in Minutes: Best Teaching Practices You Can Use Now. Our mission today is pretty simple. We're pulling out the do this tomorrow strategies. We want to connect those common pain points, the chaos, the exhaustion, to immediate system-based solutions.
And this guide is, it's so refreshing because it doesn't bury the lead. It starts right away with the three big pain points, the symptoms that almost always lead to teacher burnout.
Right.
First, there's just the daily grind of dealing with disruptive students, that feeling of a chaotic room. Second, the massive time suck, all the planning, all the grading that leads directly to burnout. And third, you have to manage expectations from, the outside.
Skeptical administrators or maybe worried parents.
Exactly. They need to see that you've got a functioning, organized classroom.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The book's promise is that small, quick, structural changes can fix these huge issues. It's about building a respectful climate, but still keeping academic expectations really high. And the key, as it says right away, is structure.
Precisely. The foundational idea for the entire guide is the power of systemic structures.
Okay.
The idea is to set up these robust systems. Some are procedural, some are physical, just once. You do it at the beginning of the year or maybe at the start of a new unit. If you rely on a system, you start making constant reactive decisions.
Which is just exhausting.
It is. It eliminates that mental fatigue, and it drastically minimizes disruption.
So, if the problem is chaos, the solution is basically a standardized procedure. Looking at the classroom management section, the philosophy seems really clear. It's less about finding a clever punishment and way more about proactive structure and relationship.
Yeah, that's the core of it. The goal is simple. Spend less time on discipline, more time on instruction.
So how does that look in practice?
Well, let's look at the procedural routines. We're talking about those little moments that just eat up time. Like, do you have a consistent start of class routine?
How kids come in, what they do right away?
Exactly. How are materials handed out? The guide really stresses that clear transitions between activities and defined end-of-class habits. Those are the structural things that stop chaos before it even starts.
The book talks a lot about something called closure. For anyone who doesn't use that term, what exactly does the book mean by that?
A closure routine is just a defined short instructional activity. It happens in the last 3 to 5 minutes of class.
And why is that so critical?
Because it recaptures those minutes that are usually lost.
Oh.
The shuffling of papers, the packing up early, the source suggests things like exit tickets, a quick question on an index card. It gives you immediate data on who got the lesson. So by setting that routine up once, those final minutes are always instructional, not just disorganized.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. The physical structure, the room layout. The guide argues that the actual physical environment is a system in itself that saves time and prevents problems.
This is where that efficiency analogy comes in. The book says it's like building a robust factory floor. If you design your layout logically, you minimize wasted motion. For a teacher, that means deliberately planning your seat arrangement, making sure you have clear sight lines, and being really intentional about traffic flow. You want to actively get rid of those dead zones where students can hide.
So collecting papers shouldn't be a random walk around the classroom. It should be a single, logical path.
Absolutely. And think about materials access. If you have one designated spot to pick up handouts, another spot to return work, a specific rule for sharpening pencils, you reduce all that wandering around, which is where disruption starts.
So you're basically preventing problems just by, moving the recycling bin to a better spot.
It's mechanical prevention.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're building a workflow that just makes good behavior easier than bad behavior.
I love that analogy. Okay, let's pivot to that second major pain point. Teacher burnout. The lost hours. If we've handled the chaos in the room, how does the book suggest we save hours of work outside of it?
It hits hard on workflow efficiency, especially in the time management section. A key strategy is to shift your mindset away from day-by-day planning to planning in units. So you map out the entire unit's objectives, the assessments, the sequence of activities first. You use these simple curriculum maps.
But that sounds like more work up front, not less. What's the payoff?
The payoff is huge. Once that unit framework is done, your daily lessons become almost plug and play. You're not staring at a blank screen every night. You're just slotting activities into a flow you already built. That initial investment saves you, so much time over the course of a semester.
And then there's the big one, The true administrative behemoth. Grading. That's where my weekends used to go. What are the strategies in the grading section for staying sane?
The whole focus is on using grading to communicate, not just to calculate points. The source is a huge advocate for simple, criteria-based rubrics. This is so important.
So instead of writing paragraphs of comments.
You're using a checklist,
Yeah.
or what's called a single-point rubric, which just clearly states what success looks like. It forces you to be clear with the student, and it dramatically speeds up your marking time.
So the goal isn't necessarily grading less work, it's making the process itself super efficient and clear.
Precisely. And it also tackles the logistical nightmare of, late work and extra credit.
Oh, yeah.
It says to set clear, consistent policies, like a fixed grace period or a maximum penalty for late stuff no matter the excuse. You set that structural rule once, and you eliminate the 50 individual judgment calls you'd have to make all year. That prevents so much burnout.
That's fantastic. So we've addressed the structure of time. Let's shift to the instructional moves themselves. How does the book suggest keeping those academic expectations high and, maybe more importantly, getting every single student to participate?
Yeah. The strategies section is all about these core instructional habits that create a constant feedback loop. The key strategy is checking for understanding, or C4U, frequently.
Which means moving beyond just asking any questions.
Oh, that's the most useless question in teaching. Instead, you integrate structures like those exit tickets we mentioned, or quick writes, or mini whiteboards. You get real-time data from every student. That way, you know who's with you and who isn't right now.
And this ties back to behavior, right? If students are engaged in a structured task, they're not being disruptive.
Absolutely. Engagement is the ultimate preventative tool. The book suggests specific interaction structures, like the classic pair share routine. You have students turn to a neighbor for a very short time discussion. That ensures every single student has to process an information, not just the two kids who always raise their hands.
I wonder, though, doesn't focusing so much on rigid procedures and structure, doesn't that risk stifling spontaneity or, genuine student-led discovery?
That's a critical question. And the guide actually addresses this by suggesting that structure is what makes creativity possible.
How so?
Well, if students know exactly how to transition to group work or how to get materials, the cognitive load for all that logistical stuff just disappears. And that frees up both you and the students to focus all of your energy on the actual complex academic task. The structure is the container for the creativity.
That makes a lot of sense. The structure frees up the intellectual energy. So what about those moments when the teacher just has to talk? How do you keep attention during a presentation or an explanation?
The book advises breaking long explanations into a series of short mini-lessons. So maybe 7 to 10-minute chunks. And after each chunk, you have a built-in check for understanding break. They also recommend using things like note-taking frames, so structured handouts, so students are actively organizing the information as they listen, not just passively receiving it.
And finally, let's just briefly connect all these practices back to that third pain point, the external stakeholders.
Yes. When a parent or an administrator comes to you with a concern, what they usually want is evidence of competence and clarity. And when you use these systems, transparent rubrics, clear instructional methods, a calm, functional classroom, you are constantly generating objective proof of your effectiveness.
The professionalism is just. It's demonstrable.
It is. The systems address concerns before they ever escalate into a real problem.
So what does this all really mean for you, the learner? This guide presents teaching not as just a bunch of tips, but as a whole, interconnected system. A solution to a behavior problem might actually be found in an instructional tweak you make.
In essence, the book is a diagnostic toolkit. It identifies the symptoms disruption, burnout, right, in the introduction, and then it provides immediate actionable treatments in the later sections, whether that's a system from grading or a routine from classroom management.
So if the foundational principle of this whole approach is setting up systems once to maximize your efficiency and stop constant decision-making, here's a final thought for you to consider. What is this single most inefficient routine that's currently running in your own professional or even personal life? Maybe it's how you handle your email. Maybe it's meal prep. What's one thing you could replace with a simple preset system this week? Just something to mull over. That wraps up this deep dive. We appreciate you joining us as we analyze this really practical guide. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the source material that matters to you.